I'm really excited to be speaking with Dr. Daniel Pompa Program, Fixing the Cell to Get Well. We're going to talk about all detoxing and many other things related to your health and wellness, that we're all suffering from some illness that we've all been experiencing. And the answer is we don't know. Standard medicine hasn't been able to help so many of us. So today we're going to talk with Dr. Poma's health journey and how he healed and has shared his healing journey for so many people. So welcome, Dr. Daniel Pompa. Well, I'm really grateful to have Dr. Pompa here and talking about health and wellness and about toxins. And, we're suffering more and more, it seems, today than ever before. As a fertility specialist, I see so many people suffering. And on your side as a chiropractor, and then I've read a little bit about your story, but maybe you could kind of give a little introduction to those listening in on your story and what you think is important to heal.
Yeah, look, I mean, back in 1999, I got very sick, unexplainable. The only diagnosis I could give myself is neurotoxic illness. But that said, I had thyroid problems. I had hormone problems. Brain fog, anxiety, couldn't sleep, gut problems, sound sensitivity, irritability, became someone I wasn't. So I say all that to say, out of that came everything that I teach today. And so for 20 years, I've been teaching doctors. And more recently, I've taken a program directly to people looking for answers. I feel I was called into this. I didn't choose it. It chose me. So from pain to purpose. It's my whole motto. Everything I learned came out of that.
The Pompa Program, you're a trained chiropractor, and I imagine in some way chiropractic medicine is sort of directed into systems. This is how we diagnose disease and then we treat it. Although I think chiropractic is a little bit more holistic than standard medicine is.
Yeah.
And did your chiropractic knowledge help you sort of find these things, or do you think there's a barrier there in some of these ideas?
Oh, it gave me two things. The schooling gave me the ability to read the literature, and understand it. My dyslexia gave me the ability to put it all together and remember it, honestly. It gave me the philosophy that, look, the body has an innate ability to heal itself. If we remove the interference, the body can heal. And I hung on to that because I believe it with all my heart. And even when I was at my worst, and I said to my wife, maybe I'm just crazy. She said, no, you're not. It's like you were normal, now you're not. And, you just haven't found it yet. And she was right. I hadn't found it yet. And when I found it and removed it, I got my life back.
Yeah, and your website is very informative. Your storytelling is really inspiring. Tell us a little bit about, through your research and your pain adventure, what did you find?
When you get on, and the internet wasn't what it was back then, right? But when you get on there, first thing you find is a lot of confusion and contradiction, especially, once I realized I've got toxic issues, neurotoxic issues, and then detox, it's a mess. And that's probably why, I've spent my life teaching what real detox is and what real detox comes from and how to do it, because that's what the world needs right now. That's another story we can move into. But, when I found, I was chasing my thyroid, my adrenals for many years. And I started working with an amazing endocrinologist. And he said to me one day, I think you have mercury toxicity. And I said, you know what? I thought so too. Because when I was looking online, I found Mad Hatter's disease. And I don't know if you remember what it is, but, I was mad as a hatter, right? They were using mercury to make felt hats as part of the process to attenuate mold. And I was like, this is me, right? I have every symptom of that. And so I went and got a blood test, wrong test. And that's what I told him. I said, I got a blood test. It showed up negative. Of course I had mercury, but not out of range. And he said, wrong test. You got to challenge it out of the tissue. And even that isn't perfect because it's probably what's in your brain, in your pituitary hypothalamus, what controls your thyroid adrenals. That's where probably the problem is. He was right. And anyways, realized that. And, I stumbled upon some things, and I actually thought that it was probably my control tower, my pituitary. That, the hypothalamus gets the information back from the body, and sends it to the pituitary, and the pituitary kind of drives, all the function and tells the body what hormones to release. But, and that turned out to be it. And that's why all my, efforts downstream of trying to get my adrenals back on board, trying to fix my gut even. I mean, all these things just weren't working despite my diet change, despite doing everything I was doing. I just wasn't in the right place. So once I got there, removed the cause, I literally detoxed my brain. That's a big part of what I teach. Now, again, I'm making that sound easier. It took me, I literally believe in my heart, God showed me these things, for people to be, learning today.
You didn't get sick and then go to the doctor, figure this out, and a month later you were healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It took years to figure it out because no one else seems to be in the mainstream for sure.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pick these out. But how did you find the mercury source or the toxic source? And how did you find the sort of the methodology to heal?
When he said, once I realized, okay, I had mercury toxicity, I did a urine challenge test where I challenged it out of my tissue. And again, it's not a perfect test. There's no perfect test for mercury because a lot of it can be in the brain and you're not getting it challenged out of the brain, just in the body. However, I had not just mercury, but I was accumulating a lot of different heavy metals. Genetically, I definitely wasn't good at getting rid of it, but I had a lot of exposures. So I said to him, where do you think I got it from? He said, did you have any dental work done around when this happened? And that was the most pointed question I've ever been asked. And as it turned out, he was right. My symptoms actually started shortly after I got silver amalgam filling, which contained 50% mercury. I had 2 of them taken out. And it was days after that the fatigue started. But I thought it was the anesthetic. I thought it was just, I never really put it together. And then it was like anxiety. Then it was insomnia. Then it was weird panic attacks. Then it was depression. Then it was, then the gut went. And then, it was boom, 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 boom. And so I never really put it all together. And when I got the rest of them out correctly, differently than I did the first time, then I had to research how to get it out of the body correctly, more in particular, the brain. And again, that's what I teach because most people do it incorrectly. And listen, first of all, you said it. Regular allopathic medicine is not dealing with this, right? If you get an acute exposure, they'll give you an IV maybe, which could be the right protocol for acute. But chronic exposure, IV is absolutely not. Matter of fact, I almost put me in the hospital doing an IV. And, so I had to learn how to get it out of my body correctly. But alternative medicine is a disaster here too. What they're doing for detox is not correct. And therein lies my passion.
You initially were teaching doctors. Internet didn't really, it was there, but our current methodologies of sharing this thing on social media has certainly changed over the years. So many people are looking for taking control of their own health and wellness because allopathic medicine and maybe even some of the alternatives aren't working either. This seems to be the most appropriate approach. I actually joined one of your webinars today and was very intrigued by it. I didn't get a chance to look at the testing yet, but tell us a little bit about sort of where are most of us getting our toxins and exposure to these things that really are leading for standard medicine. It's usually a drug. We're really good at like whatever the symptom is, we give a drug. And certainly in alternative medicine, it might be similar, but different treatments. Comment on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, exposures, it's become even a bigger problem, right? And look, heavy metals, amalgams, silver fillings, the mercury vapor goes right into the brain, crosses the blood-brain barrier. That starts in utero. It really is from the womb to the tomb that we bioaccumulate these types of toxins. There's a study called the Drash study. The number of fillings, silver fillings in mom's mouth is proportional to how much they found in the baby's brain. My mother had those fillings. I got my own. I wore contact lenses in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. The saline solution had mercury right in it, and I'm putting it into my eyes, directly into my brain. So it really explained a lot of my exposures, right? My exposure. There was a time where I was eating a ton of tuna because I was into working out, right? So I had plenty of exposures. And really, I don't really know that my genetics are any worse than anybody else's. I believe that those exposures shut down my natural detox pathways. And then I started accumulating everything. And that became the problem. If you look at what people are exposed to today, I'll add one more problem. No, I'll add two more problems to my problem. Right now, they're putting aluminum in jet fuel just to make it more efficient, right? Just saving billions of dollars. There's no conspiracy here. It's business. But unfortunately, it's falling out of the air and going into our water and food supply. The level of aluminum that we're exposed to is like no time ever. Acid rain causes aluminum to release from the soil. It's the second most abundant element in the Earth's crust. But when it releases, now it becomes free aluminum into the water, into the food. So, and then not to mention all the things that we're doing in our personal care products that have aluminum in it. Aluminum and mercury in the brain are a disaster. You know, we know it leads to neurodegenerative conditions. We know it leads to brain fog. We know it leads to, accumulates in the pituitary, leading to hormone problems. You know, and we have so many people that are being affected by that. Okay, fast forward now. We have glyphosate being used since the late 90s, 2000s. Well, Stephanie Seneff, senior scientist at MIT, she was the first to show, it was a 2012 study, as I mentioned, she was the first to show that glyphosate allows these things that we have already, these heavy metals that we're already been exposed to cross deeper into the brain and create even more problems. She believes is leading to the autism, the diabetes, and the depression. I mean, all these conditions, the neurodegenerative conditions. So we have this perfect storm of glyphosate. Oh, it also opens up your gut barrier, which allows more toxins to cross in. So those three alone. Okay, now plastics, forever chemicals have soared in also the 90s, 2000s. And, these are hormone disruptors that, they say we eat a credit card size of plastic a week, every human, because of the exposures from microplastics in water and food. And, anyways, you asked the question, where are we getting these exposures? There you go.
Well, so I always say in the what we breathe, drink, eat, and what is exposed directly through the skin. And there must be infinite number of other chemicals that we don't even know about, I imagine, in our environment today. Exposure in our homes, in our workplaces, or cars, or wherever. I mean, how do we get away from these things?
Well, look, it's true what you're saying. I mean, I don't know if you saw the movie Dark Waters, but it exposed the forever chemicals, PFAs, forever chemicals. It came in non-stick first, and now it's in flame retardants, wrinkle-free, dental floss, eye care, eye drops. I mean, cosmetics. It's, you have right now around you things that have forever chemicals in them. Why is it important? If you watch the movie Dark Waters, you realize it's driving explosion of diabetes, thyroid problems, thyroid cancer, hormone disruption, cancer in general. I mean, at the end of the movie, it said it's basically every living thing on the planet now has forever chemicals in them, because of two companies, DuPont and 3M. And, it's now just coming out where the lawsuits are finally being won. But meanwhile, we've all been exposed to these hormone disruptors. So how do you get rid of them? Listen, we have to do the best job we can to minimize, to educate ourselves. My Instagram page is dedicated to this. I have over 1 million followers that my kids convinced me to go on social media and tell people, and I didn't want to do it. So, he hired my younger son to film me and made me do it because he bonused him. So I did it for that reason. Now I'm so glad because, I'm getting the message out, and, never imagined I could. But the fact is we have to avoid them the best we can. But to your point, you're not going to do it completely. And there come, why people need to learn how to detox. You need to clean up your diet. We need to clean up these things. We have to stop the influx. Okay. But the problem is we have to also open up the drain. Real detox is what happens at our cells day in, day out. If that slows down, like it happened to me, you will get sick. I don't care what your diet looks like. I don't care what you do. You're going to get sick if these toxins build up. Happened to me. And I ate a good diet. Okay. I ate a good diet.
You exercised.
I exercised.
You lived a really clean,
I did.
positive life, but
And
you were suffering. And as you bring the story is in some way that was a gift for you in order to share what you're sharing. And I think that's powerful. You talk about cellular, you get right down to the cell. Can you give a little just brief explanation about the cell, which ultimately is the organism or the microscopic part of our body that's being damaged more than anything?
We have 50 trillion of these cells, right?
Yep.
To really feel good, we have to get good things in.
Yep.
And we have to get bad things out. So I keep going the wrong way because I had to get used to this.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple, right? But this cell membrane, it's just 2 layers of fat, but there's a saying, it's not mine. Life and death begins on that membrane, meaning how you feel every day ultimately is this membrane, but it is the detoxer. It allows all the nutrients in, and it allows everything bad to come out. Your cells detox every day. If it didn't happen, you'd be dead. But here's the thing, your level of how good you feel is determined by how this works. How are the good things coming in and the bad things removing? Here's the problem. There's something called cellular inflammation. And cellular inflammation is blocking that process. You can't get the good things in despite taking all your wonderful vitamins and changing your diet. When your membranes are inflamed, it almost feels like diets don't work and supplements don't work and hormones don't work. And the problem is when your cells are inflamed, toxins start to build up in this cell. And when that happens, everything bad happens. Your cell energy drops. Your genes that are in the nucleus of your cell, DNA, if I write that in there, DNA, that way, they start to get triggered. And now the thyroid condition, the diabetes, it's turned on. It's called epigenetics. Toxins continue to build up, cellular energy drops, and now you don't feel well despite what you do. Oh, there's one more problem. On every cell, you have hormone receptors. Hormones, thyroid, estrogen, testosterone, insulin, they have to attach to these receptors. And when they do, you feel great. Honestly, you stay lean late in life. I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are. You have plenty of energy and all works well. But what if something's blocking these receptors and the hormones can't get their message in? Nothing works. You don't feel well. Simple as that. I'm making it very simple. Oh, and by the way, most of us run to the doctor like I did and get our blood tested. And we look at our estrogen, our testosterone. We look at our thyroid hormone in our blood. And I was told you were normal, even though my hair was thinning. I was losing muscle, getting what I called skinny fat. I had every thyroid dysfunction symptom because I had thyroid dysfunction. My blood work was normal though, because what they didn't show me is that my cells were so inflamed because of toxins that I couldn't get the hormones or their message in the cell. I mean, honestly, this is what's happening in a mass number of people. And that's the issue.
How accurate are the blood tests that we do that give us an insight to the real cause of disease?
Look, not that accurate. I mean, blood tests will show you once things get really bad, like your liver enzymes are elevated. Your liver has been straining for years before it gets to that point. Before thyroid hormone goes up, it's estimated you've had thyroid dysfunction for at least 10 years. I think even longer, right? Because again, it's not even the hormone levels. How many people out there are making their hormone levels better by taking hormones? And I'll acknowledge there's a time and a place because your body stops producing them or can't produce them or who knows. But the point is you're taking hormones and you go to your doctor and go, okay, hey, your thyroid hormone levels look better. And you're like, doc, I don't feel better. My skin isn't better. My hair isn't better. I'm still fat. What's going on? And I have no energy, right? So the fact is that, your blood levels are better, but the hormones aren't getting themselves in the cell, or toxins build up like me in the control tower of your hormones. I couldn't control any of my hormones. My blood levels were normal, right? And now again, eventually they go out of range and they give you hormones, making your blood levels normal, but you still don't feel well.
Perfect storm. Are we living that today? And what are the super toxins?
Perfect storm we are living. And, one of the things I've learned, helping people, so many like myself, just looking for an answer where there's none, is I teach the doctors and the coaches that I coach, look for people's perfect storm. What that means is, if you've watched, I know you have because we're a certain age, but some people don't know there's a movie called The Perfect Storm. It's George Clooney. I don't know. Is it 90s? Was it 90s? And yeah, 90s.
I don't remember.
I don't
remember. Doesn't
either.
think that far back now.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, 3 weather fronts came together and it caused a catastrophic storm. And it was based on a true story. But that's what we look for in people. What are people's perfect storm? What are their 3 stressors that come together and bam, their bucket overflows and now they're sick and now they're looking for answers, right? So we want to find that perfect storm. It could be physical, chemical, emotional, right? It doesn't matter. But when it could be any combination of stressors. But look at it this way, in the perfect storm, these circles, right? You could have a physical stress going on. I was training on my bike at that point. I was exercising and running a very busy practice. So I had a lot of physical exhaustion and stress. My chemical stress was mercury, I mentioned, and I was also living in a low-grade moldy home at the time. So those 3 stressors, bam, catastrophic storm, right? So how we get people well is you have to get rid of these storms. It's typically, we all want it to be one thing, but it's typically not that simple. Like I said, my moldy home, I probably would have tolerated it much longer than I did. But because my body was dealing with the mercury that I was exposing it to so often, it started not dealing with the mold that I was in. And then I was also training at a higher level and my body started not adapting to that. So when we look for these storms and get rid of them, now we can successfully detox them.
What is the way to detox them?
It's a cellular level. I mentioned the cell membrane. That's one of the first things we have to fix. If your membrane is not working, you're not going to get the good things in and the bad things out. You have to upregulate what we call cell energy. And the mitochondria is a very important part of how we make energy. But if your cell energy is diminished and it doesn't have the batteries, so to speak, charged enough, you can't get the toxins out because everything is energy dependent. So that has to be fixed. There's something called methylation that parallels something called glutathione that your cells use to get rid of toxins. And when methylation drops, glutathione drops, and now your cells can't get rid of toxins. Real detox is a cellular problem or solution. And it's not as simple as sitting in a sauna, although saunas are great. I have one, use it all the time. It's not as simple as a 10-day cleanse. It's not as simple as making yourself poop more. I call them poopers, right? Where, people think that's detox. And I'm not against it. I'm just saying it's not that simple. How I got my life back was fixing those cellular pathways that detox us day in, day out. And then clearing these brain cells is critical. So I have 3 phases. We have a prep phase where we prepare our cells and all of the downstream detox pathways for detox. And then we move into a body phase. Before we even go deep into the brain and other deep tissues, we clear the body and we set up what is called a concentration gradient. And then the 3rd phase is the brain phase. So those phases I've taught for 20 years, and it's vitally important to follow that procedure. But the key is getting the cell to do what it should be doing.
Any comments about any special nutrition you focus on or fasting? Is that fit into these things?
I do. And my nutrition is very different than most, admittedly. I will say this. I always say this. Today, it's different than even 10 years ago, honestly. 10 years ago, especially 20, people could change their diet and 95% of their illnesses would go away, or at least they'd feel way better, right? Lose weight, feel great. Today, it's not that simple. Most people that have, matter of fact, almost all the people that have come to us really have changed their diet already. They've been on every diet possible and they're still not well because, see, it's a detox thing. You know, if you don't get rid of the cause of hormone disruption, if you don't get rid of the cause of everything that I'm talking about, turning on the genes, and these are the toxins that we're overly exposed to that are shutting down detox pathways, then you're not going to have a lasting solution. Okay, that said, I like to say you won't get well today with just diet alone, but you won't get well without changing your diet. Meaning it's like you have to change your diet, right? Okay, so let's talk about that. You know, I am a believer in fasting. I've written a book about fasting. I've been learning about fasting since the 1990s when fasting wasn't cool at all. You know, it was just me and some natural hygiene society guys that I didn't have a lot in common with, but fasting. So I'm a believer in basically autophagy, fasting and getting rid of bad cells, recreating new, and the innate intelligence that comes alive during a fast. It's part of what I teach. It's part of what I teach people. Diet change, diets, I talk about diet variation. I'm a believer in not staying in any one diet too long, right? I love carnivore diets. With autoimmune, it's like a miracle diet. You know, it's like I've loved carnivore diets for years before they were something. And ketosis, I taught ketosis for years, even though it's not a diet, it's a metabolic state.
Right.
But right. I move, my strategy is diet variation. I move people in and out of diets to create what we call hormetic stress, create diversity in the microbiome. And that strategy is something I've taught for many, many years.
And so we live in our environments with much toxin exposure, molds and other things. How do we mitigate those things? And I know firsthand from my partner has been having a lot of issues, and then found out that in our new home, there's more mold than we realized.
Yeah. Mold's a big problem. It's one of the things that I teach that we always have to assess could be part of someone's perfect storm. You know, as I said, it was mine, right? The way we are building homes in this country is the problem. Behind these walls is mold food. Yeah, in the form of paper, which is cellulose. That's what mold likes. And on the back of drywall is paper. It's hard to believe that we're still doing this. It should be outlawed. It should be illegal, because all you do is add water. And now the mold spores are there to some degree. And then you give them the food and the water, and now you have a problem. Most homes have had water leaks at one point. And if it's not dried in 36 to 48 hours, you have mold problem. And most people just dry it up on the outside, but under that wall or in that wall or under that sink is a dormant mold now that is giving a biotoxin off. And yes, one of the most deadly neurotoxins, aka biotoxin, meaning from a living thing, known to man. And I can't tell you how many people are they are sick. They don't know what's wrong. They've tried everything, and it's because they're living in mold, low-grade mold, and don't know it. Oh, and most of them have brought an expert in, put quotes around that, and they air tested their house. Wrong test, won't show it, and it's normal. And then they go, oh, thought it was mold, it wasn't. Too bad. Wrong test, wrong guy, wrong way to do it. So yes, this is something that I work with some of the best people in the country to assess anyone we're trying to help. We want to make sure their air is absolutely clean. And now we have EMFs that are a problem. Now we have other gases that are a problem. It could be your environment of why you're sick. It could be your mouth, hidden infections in the mouth. We work with dentists around the country to uncover things called cavitations and hidden infections that are chronically making people sick as well.
Dr. Rob Kiltz, another beautiful, spectacular day. And I just want to send thanks to all of those for watching the newest episode of Carnivore Conversations. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, and other streaming platforms to gain access to the full 1-hour episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more to come. God bless.